Let's walk through the consumption management page. Consumption data is made available on a daily basis starting with the previous day and going backward in time. This is done using Azure Consumption API in Azure or Databricks Billable Usage Details and AWS Cost Explorer API in AWS. The loader allows us to preload consumption data for extended periods of time in order to speed up and facilitate advanced reporting. This operation is done individually for each subscription in Azure or each account ID in AWS. We can select the subscription or account in the upper left corner of the page. This page allows admin users, so someone who maintains the Lakehouse Optimizer setup, to configure when and how often to preload consumption data into the Lakehouse Optimizer. The loader consists of 3 settings. The Load Data Since field designates the start date we want to preload consumption data for, with the end date being today. The next field allows us to set if we load data incrementally, meaning we only want to load missing data from the specified interval, or if we want a fresh start, we can select Refresh and all existing consumption data will be deleted and loaded again from the source. The last field allows us to designate how large each chunk of data being imported is. The larger the number, the more taxing it might be on the system. Currently, we have Run Now selected, which means if we click the Load button, the consumption data will be loaded only once based on these settings, but generally we will want this to run on a regular basis on some kind of interval. We can edit an existing schedule or create a new one. The settings are the same as the on-demand configuration, but we can also set some scheduling information, including a name so we can remember which configuration is which, whether or not the schedule is enabled, meaning if this box is not checked, this schedule won't run until it is enabled, along with how often we want the consumption data to be loaded based on our configuration. The next section is Cluster Events Status. Cluster events are loaded from Databricks and processed in order to provide historical views of cluster lifecycles such as autoscaling timelines or cluster configuration timelines. Here we can set a separate date for how far back these events go. Last but not least, we have the consumption loading history. This logs the history of all the times consumption data was preloaded in the past as an operation. The last run is detailed on the right side panel, and by clicking Run History, the user can bring up a dialog that details the full history of all consumption data loading done in the past, along with statuses of all the operations that ran. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of the Lakehouse Optimizer's consumption management page.